Good morning Year 7 and welcome to today's maths lesson. Let's start off with a quick starter, shall we? Can you find a half of 120? Can you convert 4 over 25 to a decimal? Can you simplify 26 over 100 and factorise 4x plus 8? Pause the video for a couple of minutes and have a go at those questions in your light blue books, please. Okay, to find a half of 120 we need to do 120 divided by 2, which gives me what, Dejan? 60, lovely. The second question I asked you, 4 over 25, what's that as a decimal? Now to convert a fraction to a decimal, we said we needed to make the denominator a power of 10. In this case, I'm going to make my denominator 100, which means that my numerator is going to be what, Edie? 16, lovely. Multiplying top and bottom by 4, 16 over 100 we can write as 0.16. Simplifying 26 over 100, we need to divide top and bottom by a whole number. I'm going to divide top and bottom by 2, which is going to leave me with 13 over 50. And finally, can you remember how to factorise? Factorise just means putting the brackets back in. So I'm going to take the 4 out. I'm going to have x, because 4 times x gives me 4x, plus 4 times what gives me 8, Darcy? 2. Lovely. 4x plus 2. Okay, Year 7, a quick recap of last lesson. We looked at converting fractions to decimals, and I said we needed to make the denominator of the fraction a power of 10. For 13 over 20, I'm going to make the denominator 100 by multiplying that bottom number by 5. I need to do the same to my top number. 13 times what gives me, 13 times 5 gives me 65. I've got 65 over 100. I can't put two numbers in my hundredths place, so I need to put my 5 in my hundredths place and my 6 in the one before, which will give me 0.65 as a decimal. For the second one, I've got 3 over 8. This means 3 divided by 8. This time I can't convert that bottom number to 100 easily, so I need to do 3 divided by 8 using my bus stop method. The number of 8's in 3 is 0, remainder 3. The number of 8's in 30 gives me how many, Trenton? 3, lovely, remainder 6. How many 8's are there in 60, Breeze? 7, 7 8's are 56, remainder 4. And Robert, how many 8's are there in 40? 5, lovely. So that gives me 0.375. Over to you, Year 7. In your light blue books, can you pause the video for 5 to 10 minutes and have a go at writing these fractions as decimals, either converting the denominator to a power of 10 or by doing a bus stop division? Pause the video and have a go at those questions now, please. And here are your answers. Please check your work and see how you did. Okay, today we're going to be moving on to percentages. Pause the video for a couple of minutes and in your light blue books, write down as much as you know about a percentage. I've given you some quick pointers on my diagram. What do you know about percentages? Pause the video for a couple of minutes and complete that now, please. Okay, so the definition of percentage. Percentage means parts out of 100 or ratio out of 100. And we know this because the word percentage comes from the Latin per cent, where per means out of and cent means 100. So we're always looking for something out of 100. Other maths topics it relates to fractions, it relates to decimals, lots of other things it relates to. Where do we see it in real life? In shops, you see like 50% off, things like that. You also see it in banks. A negative percentage means a decrease. Well done if you got that. A percentage greater than 100 relates to an increase. And percentages are measured out of 100, as we covered the Latin per cent. So dark blue books out for me, Year 7. Can I have the title Fractions, Decimals and Percentages? And underneath, we're going to look at converting, to start with, a decimal to a percentage. And to do this, we multiply by 100. So please write that in your dark blue books, and then pens down and eyes on me. I'll do an example, and then you're going to do an example. I've got 0.37 and I want to convert it to a percentage. To do this, I need to multiply by 100. So 0.37 just means 37%. Nice and easy, decimal to a percentage. In your dark blue books, pause the video, here's one for you. Okay, let's go through the answer. We're looking at 0.38 times 100, which gives me what, Barbara? 38%, lovely. Okay, Year 7, light blue books. Can you convert all of these decimals to percentages for me? Pause the video for 10 minutes and have a go at that now, please. And here are the answers. Please check your work and see how you did. Each time we're just multiplying by 100. Notice that all the decimals greater than 1 relate to a percentage that's over 100%, and we earlier said that a percentage over 100% is going to represent an increase. Okay, Year 7, dark blue books out. We're going to convert between percentages and decimals. If to go from a decimal to a percentage we multiply by 100, Lily, what do you reckon we need to do to go the other way? Divide by 100, brilliant. Please make sure you've got this written in your dark blue books, and then I'm going to do an example and you're going to do an example. My example, I want to convert 82% to a decimal, and to do this I'm going to divide by 100, which leaves me with 0.82. Over to you, Year 7. In your dark blue books, can you convert 81% into a decimal for me? Let's go through the answer. We've got 81%. In the same way, we're going to divide it by 100, which gives me 0.81. If I wanted to convert it into a percentage, I'd multiply by 100. Okay, Year 7, in your light blue books, can you pause the video for 10 minutes and have a go at these questions for me? Each time we're dividing by 100, can you convert these percentages into decimals for me now, please? And here's the answers. Please check your work and see how you did. Okay, so what did percent mean? Can anyone remind me? Charlie, what does percent mean? Percent means out of 100, from the Latin. So a percentage is really just a special type of fraction. 1% just means 1 part out of 100. So as a fraction, I could write that as 1 out of 100. And that would be the same as 1%. If I wanted to draw that in a diagram, if I had 100 squares, I'd just shade in one of them. 1 out of 100. So 10%, what could that mean? What could 10% mean for me, Rosie? 10 parts out of 100, brilliant, and I can write that as 10 out of 100. Elliot, if I've got 100 squares, how many would I shade in to represent 10% therefore? Exactly, 10 of them. And the rest of my square would be the other 90%, because 90 plus 10% gives me my 100%. I've got 25%. What could that mean, Jake? 25 parts out of 100. Brilliant. I can write that as a fraction. 25 out of 100. I could simplify that fraction, couldn't I? To 1 over 4. And if I shaded that in, I've got 25 parts shaded out of the 100. And the rest of it would be the other 75%. 50% means what, Jake Aspen? 50 parts out of 100. Brilliant. I can write that as 50 out of 100, which means, which I can simplify to a half, if I had a grid with 100 squares, I'd shade in 50 of them, or half of them. Okay, Year 7, dark blue books out. Can I have the title Converting Between Fractions, Decimals and Percentages? You can just carry on with your notes from last lesson. And then pens down and eyes on me. I'm going to do a few examples and then I'm going to give some for you to do. So watching me. If I'm converting to a percentage, I know that percentage means out of 100. So I want to make that bottom number 100. I've multiplied 10 by 10 to get 100, so I need to do the same on the top. So 6/10 is going to be 60 out of 100, or 60%. The next one, I've got 6 out of 5. Again, I want to make that out of 100. To do this, I need to multiply top and bottom by 20 this time. So I get 120 out of 100. Doesn't matter that 120 is bigger than 100. That just means it's 120%. For the next one, I've got 6 out of 20. Again, I want to put it over 100. I've multiplied by 5 this time. 6 times 5 gives me 30. So I'm looking at 30%. Now it gets trickier. I've got 6 out of 30. I can't directly multiply that 30 by something to get 100. But what I can do is I can divide it by 3. If I do that, I get 2 over 10. And 2/10 I can convert to something over 100. By multiplying by 10, which gives me 20 over 100, or 20%. Let's go over that again. I can't convert my 30 directly by 100 to 100 by multiplying by a whole number, so I've taken an intermediary step by dividing by 3 to turn it into tenths, and then multiplied by 10 to give me a number over 100. I've got to do the same process for the one below. If I divide it by 6, I get 1/10 that I can then multiply by 10, which gives me 10 out of 100, which is 10%. And the last one, if I divide top and bottom by 6, I get 1 over 100, which is 1%. Over to you, Year 7. In your dark blue books, please pause the video for 5 minutes, maybe 10 minutes, and have a go at these questions for me, converting each of these fractions to a percentage. Pause the video and have a go at that now, please. Okay, let's go through the answers. The first one, I've got 8 out of 10. Ooh. I've got 8 out of 10. I want to convert that to something out of 100. I multiply top and bottom by 10, which gives me 80 out of 100, or 80%. For the second one, I'm multiplying top and bottom by 20, which will give me 160 over 100, which equals 160%. For the next one, I can't convert 40 directly to 100, but what I can do is divide top and bottom by 4, which will give me 2 out of 10. I can then multiply by 10, which gives me 20 out of 100, or 20%. Each time we're just trying to make that denominator 100. For the next one, I've got 400, so I need to divide it by 4. Dividing by 4 is going to give me 2 out of 100, which is 2%. For the next example, I've got 8 out of 80. Again, I'm going to divide by 8 to start off, which gives me 1 out of 10. I'm then multiplying by 10, which will give me 10 out of 100, or 10%. And the last one, 8 out of 800. This time I can just divide by 8 to give me 1 out of 100, which is 1%. Notice that's the same as the example I did, which was 6 out of 600. Can you now, in your light blue books, have a go at converting each of these to a fraction, a decimal and a percentage? So some of the fractions you need to go to a decimal and then convert them to a percentage. All of them will match up with one other percentage and one other decimal. Please write these up in a table as I've shown on the right hand side with the fraction, the decimal and the percentage. Pause the video for 10 to 15 minutes and work those out now, please. And these are the answers you should have got. Please check your work and see how you did. And that's the end of today's lesson, Year 7. Please head over to Google Classroom and complete my exit ticket. Have a lovely day and thank you for listening.